do not make these 5 mistakes that are going to cost you 12 months, that will kill your outbound and will make you say, oh, outbound doesn't work for me. Of course it does. So if you are a founder who's transitioning from inbound generated leads to outbound generated leads, so if you're generating leads through referrals, or maybe you're doing some content, or maybe you're getting some kind of inbound traffic to your website, maybe through SEO. So in my line of work, I often work with companies that are transitioning from any kind of inbound that I just mentioned into outbound generated leads. And so if you're new here and you don't know who I am, my name is Stefan, and I run a consulting business for outbound sales. So over the last 4 years, we've helped more than 50 companies create and build their outbound sales engines through cold calling, cold email, LinkedIn automations, helping them generate millions of dollars in pipeline across multitude of industries. And so if you're new here, go check out my website. You'll find more social proof there. But in the meantime, my biggest issue here is that a lot of you have these wrong expectations about what outbound should be and how it should look like. And you transition your thought process and your expectations from your inbound motions into outbound. And that is where all of your outbound motions actually die. So here are those 5 crucial mistakes or misconceptions that you might have when it comes to transitioning from inbound to outbound. First is you expect to get leads as fast with outbound as you do with inbound, which doesn't work like that. Secondly, you expect your close rate on outbound meetings to be the same as close rate on your inbound meetings, which is the furthest from the truth. Third thing, you expect your close time on outbound generated leads to be the same as inbound, which is a huge mistake. Fourth, your focus on your messaging and your scripts is on the benefits of your product or service instead on the pain and the problem that you can solve for your clients. And then the fifth and the biggest one is that you actually expect that if you put in more volume, you will get better results, that it's just a volume game. No, it's not. So let's dive into each. And if you don't actually want to listen about one of these specifics, just scroll through and find the topic that you actually prefer listening to. And actually, expectation number 5 is one of the most hurtful expectations you can have as a founder when building an outbound sales team. So let's get into it. Number 1, your expectation of how soon you will start getting the leads. Most of you guys expect that it's just as easy as clicking send on an email or dialing a person and you start generating leads. And the truth is the furthest from that. You might even generate a few leads in the first few days. But what you need is actually a system that generates leads on a consistent basis where you don't even have to think about it. You just have the leads and close them, right? And so what's realistic is that you will most likely get a lead here and there in the first month, but the actual results are going to start coming in 2 to 3 months into the motion. Now, a regular company trying to do this in-house will take anywhere between 9 to 12 months to actually figure outbound out if they're able to figure it out. An agency like mine might do it significantly faster, and we're talking about like 2 to 3 months, which is actually why my flagship offer is 3 months building out your outbound sales system for $20K, right? But the things that are usually missing from that initial period and why you're not going to get to the leads as fast as you think you will is because you don't have the infrastructure in place to actually achieve good results with cold outreach. Here's what I mean. You need to build the cold email infrastructure. So you have to buy new domains that are secondary to your primary domain. Obviously, we talked about this. You must not ever send cold emails from your primary domain, right? You buy the secondary domains. You buy the inboxes. You set up their technical setups. Then obviously you need to warm up your email addresses. Buy the tools that you will be using to send out cold emails, right? Then we go into the LinkedIn. Depending on how many people you have in your organization, how many people you can actually use to send out cold DMs on LinkedIn, you got to buy certain tools and also create the copy for both emails and LinkedIn. Then you have to create a cold call script. It's not as easy as just saying, hey, how you doing? And then pitching your product. That does not work. You need a dedicated person who's going to sit on the phone and actually dial for 6 hours a day or 8 hours a day or whatever they can manage until you start getting the results. Then you have to have a calling infrastructure that's not going to mark your caller ID as spam. So there's so many things that you need to do first in order to set yourself up for success when it comes to outbound sales. Second thing, your expectations around the close rate are completely off, usually, from what I see. Founders often project their expectations from the inbound process onto the outbound process, where you have a close rate of maybe anywhere between 25, 30, up to maybe 50, 60% close rate. And you expect you're going to have the same close rate on your outbound deals. And over time, once you build infrastructure and you build out a pipeline, you might get to those numbers over time. In the beginning, especially in the beginning, you might see your close rates cut by 50%, even more. Because again, it takes so much more time to close the leads. It takes so much more time to build the trust and communicate your authority to the leads. Think about it. You're watching this video. Maybe this is the first video that you're watching of me. Maybe this is the 20th video that you're watching of me. And so now by this time, you probably already have an idea of if I'm good for your business or not. And so we've built some trust. I've established some authority in your eyes, but you will come to me as an inbound lead, right? In your case, when you were doing outbound, they've never heard of you. They've never seen you. They don't know what you can do for them. Maybe you're lying. Maybe they don't know anything about you. Therefore, it takes longer to establish credibility and trust. And therefore, it takes longer to close them, which translates into close rates, where you expect that you're going to be like, all right, so if I get 20 leads a month and I'm closing them at 50%, so that's 10 new clients a month. No, it doesn't work like that. Most likely going to be if you were closing at 50, you're going to close at 20% or 25%, because you have to transition the way how you talk to your outbound leads in a different way. And I'll share about that a little bit later, which leads me to my biggest point, which is how you communicate to your outbound prospects versus your inbound prospects. So an inbound prospect is already familiar with your offer, potentially with the problem that you're solving. So they're problem aware, they're solution aware, they're potentially even brand aware, meaning they are seeking your brand specifically. In outbound, they most likely don't have any of those. They might be problem aware. Even that is a stretch. And so there's a lot of educating that needs to be done. There's a lot of persuading that needs to be done. And if they've taken the time to sit on a call with you, you need to understand why. So the first thing that you or your account executive want to learn on a sales call with a cold outbound generated prospect is, why are you here? What do you want to achieve? What made you accept a call when my SDR cold called you? And then they're going to give you an answer. The most important thing that you need to do is not stop there. That's going to be a superficial answer. Oh, I just need to fix my pipeline. I need to increase the number of meetings. Why? You need to go 3, 4, 5 levels deeper in order to understand their actual motivation to be on that call, so you can understand what the actual pain and problem is. So for example, when I'm selling, the first thing that I would say to a prospect that, let's say, responded to my cold email or accepted a call from my cold caller, I might say, what prompted you to get on a call with me? I mean, did something that you saw in the messaging actually hit a pain that you might be experiencing? I mean, I mentioned XYZ as a potential pain in my email. What would you say? Is that something that you are potentially trying to solve? And so with that, I would try to get into the mind of like, why are they there and what are they trying to achieve? Then and only then, once you understand what they are trying to solve, is when you can transition into your next part of the call, right? I'm not going to turn this into a sales training. There are a lot better people to do that than me. But when it comes to lead gen, you need to switch the way you think about outbound prospects versus inbound prospects, right? Third expectation that I see is very wrong from founders is your expectation for how long it will take you to close. What people usually do is they project how much time it takes them to close an inbound lead onto outbound. And that is the biggest mistake of all, because what takes you a month, maybe 45 days, maybe 2 months, in outbound, it's going to take you 2 to 3 times more. So 6, 9, 12 months. And the higher you go towards the enterprise, meaning who you target, the longer the sales cycle is going to be, simply because there's more people involved, more people that you need to persuade into your credibility, more departments that you need to work with. And all of that just takes a lot of time. What you can expect realistically is that your close time is going to double or triple when you start doing outbound leads. So you need to think beforehand and plan that you will need a lot more time until you get to the revenue that you're trying to achieve. However, on the other hand, outbound is beautiful because you can actually target very precisely who you want to work with, and the likelihood that they will close is higher compared to inbound, especially when you work out your model, because inbound, anyone can jump in and you have qualification issues. On the outbound side, you don't necessarily have as many qualification issues as much as you have trust issues, right? You just have to treat those funnels as completely separate funnels. The inbound funnel is going to generate more leads, but are going to be less qualified. The outbound funnel is probably going to generate less leads, but are going to be higher quality. They're going to take longer to close, but they're usually going to close with more certainty later, and they will generate probably more revenue because you can then target very precisely the type of organizations that need your product the most or have the biggest problem. Number 4, your product positioning isn't tight enough for outbound. So inbound leads tolerate unclear messaging, at least to an extent. That's why usually when it's not clear enough, you get a lot of leads through inbound, but they often are not as qualified as you would like them to be. So you might be getting a lower ACV or maybe not your ideal tier 1 type of prospect. But for inbound, you have to be extremely precise in understanding and communicating why you, why now, and what is the exact problem that I'm solving for you. Or on the other hand, what is the exact problem that you can solve for me, right? That's how your prospect is going to be thinking. So your communication, whether that's on the phone, on your script, or it is through cold DMs or cold emails, you need to be focused on the problem that you can solve for a person instead of the benefit that you are offering them. So if you think about it, problem and pain comes first, then comes the benefit, right? So the benefit or the outcome is how you solve the problem. And when they are not problem aware, which is the situation with outbound leads, you need to explain that they actually have a problem. So either you will uncover a problem that they weren't aware of, or you will communicate that you understand that they have a problem and you're offering a solution. So either way, you're positioning yourself from the get-go as an authority. But only if you communicate that in your messaging, in your scripts, without mentioning any benefits upfront. So let me give you an example. If you're sending a cold email that says, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I've built a company to solve this problem. Here's what we can do for you. Bullet 1, 2, 3, 4. If this sounds interesting, let's have a call. This is going to have an exactly 0.03% reply rate, and the replies are going to be unsubscribed. What you want to do is you want to attack the pain. You want to mention the pain or the problem that you know or assume that they are experiencing. So you might say something, hey, I saw this, right? Something about their company. What that usually means is insert pain. Or, hey, I saw this, and then ask a question, how are you solving this problem that logically comes from that observation? And then your value proposition needs to be filled with social proof. XYZ company solved that issue by doing this with us, right? We go through cold email practices in some other videos. The point is, focus on the pain and problem, not the benefits that you provide, right? Similarly, on a cold call, instead of saying, hey, how are you doing? I'm calling from so-and-so company. We offer this, this, and this, and we help people just like you. Do you want to get on a meeting? You're going to get a hang up, right? Instead, you might ask questions first, right? So I prefer a permission-based opener. There's a lot of people who are not a fan of this method. Whatever you're doing, you want to get to a point where you're asking questions. And so I might say, hey, I saw something about your company. Would you mind me asking a couple questions about it? They might be like, yes, no, whatever. And then you go into the questions. So how do you make sure you solve this problem? Why do you do this instead of this? Whatever, right? Just asking a question that's going to prompt them to think about the problem instead of going straight to the benefit or the solution. Once they accept or agree that they might have a problem or express some kind of interest, maybe they start asking you questions back. That's when you book a meeting. That's what you want to achieve on a cold call, right? So instead of repeating some silly benefits that you can provide, you want to start off with pain-oriented communication, right? All right, and so number 5, and this is something that hurts most organizations trying to transition into outbound generated leads, which is you think that it is just a volume game. So if you can send more cold emails or if you can dial more people, you will achieve more results. And on paper, that is true to an extent. But let me challenge that thinking for you right now. There is probably about 1 up to 3% of businesses who are in market for what you are selling. And so theoretically, if you were to reach out to 100% of your total accessible market, so all of the companies and leads that could potentially buy from you, theoretically, 1 to 3% would buy from you or would convert into an opportunity or whatever. But in reality, you cannot hit 100% of your target audience every month or every quarter. Most of you are not able to do that, especially if you're just starting out with outbound. So you need to do things that will increase the likelihood that you are actually hitting those 3 initial percent of people who are actually in market and more likely to buy from you in this cycle of outreach. How do you do that? Well, you use something that we call triggers or signals. And I'm not going to get into too many details about this. We have a whole video dedicated to triggers specifically. But what you want to do is you want to rely on some signals, observations about their company that are going to increase the likelihood that they might be interested in buying your product or solution. And so spray and pray is the worst strategy that you can do, because if you're hitting too many people who are not in market and to whom the message that you're putting in front of them is not relevant, you will have a lot of unsubscribes, a lot of people who, for example, mark you as spam or anything of that sort if you're sending cold emails, which is going to lead to lower deliverability, which will decrease your ability to hit those 3% who are in market even further because your deliverability is off. And so you're not hitting 100% of the people that you are actually trying to reach out to. Same goes for phone numbers. Your SDRs are going to be literally burning money because they're wasting time on the phones with people who are not relevant at this time. So you want to focus on triggers and observations, and triggers are things like funding announcements or expanding the team or hiring a key person or reaching out to a recently hired person, or there's a bunch of triggers and signals that you can use to reach out to people with a relevant message and a higher probability that they will convert. You know what to do. Go down below into the description of this video, click on the link, take the outbound readiness test, and book your free consultation. Worst case scenario, you're gonna get a detailed, structured recommendation, what you need to implement and what things you need to change in order to set yourself up for success for outbound sales. This is the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, you're going to partner with us, and over the next 3 months, we will build your outbound sales motion that is going to include cold emails, LinkedIn outreach, cold calling from our cold caller, and those 3 things combined, and all of those things in combination with the strategies and the tactics that we're going to implement and the list building and finding signals and triggers for your prospects that are going to increase the likelihood that you will be talking to people who are more in market for what you're looking for. I'll see you in the next video.